everyone. This is BVM Sports Chalk Talk, and you are tuning in to episode number 22. I'm Lucas Semb alongside Scott Procter and Matt Morris, and we've got lots of madness to talk about. The NCAA tournament has delivered, as it always does, with most brackets already busted heading into the Sweet 16. So we'll preview that next round that begins on Saturday. And in the meantime, NFL free agency has been overshadowed, but we will talk about the biggest winners and losers so far in free agency. But Scott, we'll start with you, as it always seems like we do, and talk March Madness. Pac-12 is currently dominating the tournament with a 9-1 record. Scott, two of these teams, the USC Trojans and the Oregon Ducks, will face off in the Sweet 16. Which one do you think will move on to represent the Pac-12?
Yeah, Luke, love this question. Love this matchup. I had both of these teams in my Sweet 16 and obviously predicted this matchup. I'm glad the Pac-12 has reminded people that they can hoop too, with the Big Ten, ACC, and even the SEC being the talking points here in recent memory. I actually brought up USC last week, even though we didn't talk about the Trojans, because I mentioned them as the first big test Gonzaga will face in that West region, largely because of Evan and Isaiah Mobley. Chris Duarte of Oregon had probably my favorite tournament performance thus far. He gave you 23, 7, and 3 on 9 to 12 shooting on Monday. The Ducks look rested and so confident. Figueroa hit 5 threes, and Oregon was just on fire. Simple as that. The 80 points Iowa scored on Oregon should be enough to win a college basketball game in March, but USC isn't going to give up 95 points, point blank, period. They held Oregon at 58 in a 14-point win last month, and Isaiah Mobley didn't even play. I expect a similar result here this weekend. USC is the better team, although Oregon's Dana Altman is the better coach and one of the best coaches across the country for that matter. USC will meet Gonzaga in the Elite Eight.
God, I got to agree with you. And honestly, the Pac-12 really surprised me. I think that their overall play has just been unbelievable. They came in and they didn't flinch against any of these top teams. Oregon's win over Iowa was unbelievable. And to your point, to have Iowa score 80 and still lose is something. But what puts USC over the edge for me, because obviously Oregon and USC are both great defensive teams or great offensive teams, it's the defense of USC that really just puts it over the edge for me. I mean, this is a team that just beat Kansas by 34, held Kansas to 29% shooting from the field, to 24% shooting from three. Both Mobley brothers, who are unbelievable right now, obviously Isaiah and Evan, they are just playing at such a level, and they add so much on defense as well as offense that I just don't think Oregon can hang with them. And I think that USC's defense is going to be the deciding factor and put them over the edge.
Well, we all agree here on this one. The Mobley twins are just way too much not to move on. Like you said, Matt, they beat Kansas by 34 points with Jalen Wilson back in the lineup. Evan and Isaiah Mobley combined for 27 points, 21 rebounds, and 9 assists in that game. USC's strength is completely opposite the strength of the Ducks. USC has 2 dominant bigs, and Oregon's biggest starter is 6'6". The Trojans have the wings to keep up with Oregon's wings. They have Taj Edey. They have Drew Peterson. But Oregon doesn't have the bigs to keep up with USC. That's why there will be a glaring mismatch in this game, and I think USC should have no problem getting to the Elite Eight. But the other West Region Sweet 16 game is the Gonzaga Bulldogs against the Creighton Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, in my opinion, have been an absolute surprise team to be at this point, and they'll now face the Bulldogs, who have been rolling through everyone this season. Matt, what will this outcome be this weekend?
It'll be Gonzaga. I mean, we all have Gonzaga winning the national championship. Watching them over the weekend has changed nothing for me. They're still the best team in the tournament. They're going to win.
Yeah, man, I'm echoing the same sentiments. I'd probably push back that this weekend didn't change anything because, if anything, I probably like Gonzaga a little bit more based off what I've seen this weekend. Kispert, Timmy, Jalen Suggs, they're just too much for any team. I have yet to see a team really even challenge Gonzaga in a close game with 4 minutes to go, let alone really have a chance of, beating them at the end of the game. So I expect Gonzaga to continue to roll. They'll have a nice test with USC in the Elite Eight round, but again, the West region is Gonzaga's.
Absolutely. This one's really simple. No need to be long-winded. Gonzaga's been dominating teams, and Creighton shouldn't even be here. They were taken to the wire by UCSB, and then That game was much closer than the score indicates against Ohio. They were taken to the wire by Ohio as well. If they play like that against Gonzaga, the Bulldogs will leave with a 20-plus point win. But let's move on to the South, where the two NCAA powerhouses are still alive in Baylor and Villanova, and they'll see each other this weekend. Scott, who will prevail in this primetime matchup?
Yeah, listen, I gotta be honest. I didn't expect Villanova to get out the first round, so it'd be disingenuous at best for me to think they have a chance of knocking off Baylor. The Bears beat their first two tournament opponents, Hartford and Wisconsin, by a combined 37 points. And I can't figure out who their best player is, and that's a good problem to have. I'm inclined to go with the first-team All-American Jared Butler, who became the second Baylor player ever to have 9+ assists in a tournament game. But Maceo Teague is a certified sniper who torched Texas Tech earlier this month with 35 points on 10 threes, is now shooting 45% from deep through 2 games in the tournament. And Davion Mitchell has Damian Lillard, confusing him for Donovan Mitchell. They both kind of look alike. They kind of have the same type of athletic build. They both wear number 45. Davion Mitchell, he's just so athletic, quick off his feet, and he is a hound on the defensive end. Clamps, real clamps. Flagler and Mullet Meyer, they both can stroke it too. Like I said last week, I believe it'll take an individual talent like a Cade Cunningham, an Ayo Dosunmu, or a Jalen Suggs to beat Baylor. And now it looks like they won't see someone like that until the national championship, with Illinois, Oklahoma State knocked off. Jeremiah Robinson Earl isn't far off from that tier of players. He is the co-Big East Player of the Year, but Colin Gillespie isn't walking back through that door for Villanova, for Creighton. For Villanova, I'm sorry. And Scott Drew has the Bears on a mission. I expect to see Baylor in the Final Four, as I've said since the new year.
Listen, the reason I think that Nova still has a puncher's chance, and because obviously it's March, anything can happen, you have to look at what Nova can bring to the table and what they might be able to do and why they could beat the Baylor Bears. One is, originally, like you, Scott, I didn't think Nova was going to get out of the East. They struggled get out of the first round because they struggled towards the end of the season. A big part of that is because Colin Gillespie went out with a season-ending injury, and that obviously hurt. But they figured out how to move forward without him. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, to your point, has been playing unbelievably well. 18 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists against North Texas. 22 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists against Winthrop. And not only that, but last weekend against North Texas, they shot over 50% from 3. 15 of 30, 50% from 3 and 55.4% from the field. They're moving the ball well. They had a 34-6 run to close out the first half against North Texas. They're playing well, and they figured out how to move on without their best player. And they're having everybody step up around them. Jermaine Samuels, Caleb Daniels, Justin Moore have all stepped up and have both scored, double digits in these last 2 games. As far as talent, I respect Wisconsin, and obviously Hartford, a great story as well. But I think Nova will be the best team Baylor has played up to this point. And if Nova comes out and just throws a punch right away, they move the ball well, they play hard-nosed defense like they can do, and match Baylor for that intensity, I think that this is a game that can go down to the wire. And Villanova also, with Jay Wright, this is a program that when it comes down to tournament time, coaches tend to push teams over the edge. And Jay Wright is a coach, and Villanova is a program that can definitely be pushed over the edge. And so you have to at least be a little worried if you're the Baylor Bears that Villanova can come in and surprise you.
So let me get this straight. Are you picking Villanova?
Yeah, I'll pick Villanova. Why not? My bracket's destroyed. I think Villanova can absolutely come in and win this game. And it's for all the reasons I just said. And also, you talk about the best player. Jeremiah Robinson Earl is the best player on Villanova, and he's playing like it. And when you have that happening in tournament time, there's always a chance.
Sure, but at that same token, you mentioned how Villanova is going to be the best team Baylor's played. I think Baylor's going to be the best team Villanova's played in quite a while. The Baylor Bears are one of the teams I picked to make it to the championship game, and they are showing exactly why myself and many others picked them to get there. They beat Hartford in the round of 64 by 24 points, and then they beat Wisconsin by 13 points, a game they dominated the entire time. If you watch that game, you just saw how much more lengthy and athletic and skilled they were than that Wisconsin team. The Badgers wanted to slow it down, take their time, because that's their style, but any chance Baylor got, they were pushing the floor. They were filling the lanes. They were knocking down fast break threes, and they totally outclassed the Badgers. Now, Villanova is better than Wisconsin, but they've been playing without Colin Gillespie, and they've done an incredible job, like you guys mentioned. Jeremiah Robinson Earl has almost certainly re-entered his name into the minds of NBA scouts, but they will not have enough to beat Baylor. If they had Gillespie, I think they'd give him a run for their money, but you need your team at full strength to beat a team like Baylor, and that's why I think the Bears will be on top. And hey, I just want to give a shout out to Oral Roberts University out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, who as a 15 seed will be playing in the Sweet 16, and they did it by knocking out some legitimate teams, number 2 Ohio State, who many had in their Final Four, and Matt Morris being one of them. And then they knocked off Florida, who typically has some success in the tournament. Matt, I'll let you talk first since they knocked off your Buckeyes. They're in the other South region Sweet 16 game versus Arkansas. Do you think their magical run continues on Saturday, or does Arkansas advance?
I mean, I love Oral Roberts' story. Obviously, when you have the leading scorer in the nation, you can make some magic in March, and they definitely did. They came out, and Ohio State played poorly. Left them stay in the game, and Oral Roberts completely took advantage of it and played perfectly. I mean, when you're going up against a two seed, you can't really ask much more from a 15. I like their story, but I think that Arkansas is legit. I think that the way that the Razorbacks play on both ends of the court, that fast style, that hard-nosed defense, I keep using that term, but I've been impressed with the defense in this tournament. The teams that have been playing defense very well have just stood out to me, and Arkansas is one of those teams because I thought Colgate could surprise them, and they just ran away with it. Their athleticism, their ability to shoot, and their defense is, I think, going to be too much for Oral Roberts, and the Cinderella run ends here.
Luke, I like that you poked a little bit of fun at Matt for, his Ohio State Final Four pick. I can double up. I got on my stylish all black today for the funeral of both of your guys' Final Four. Luke, half of your Final Four is already done. And Matt, like you mentioned, 3 of his 4 are already gone. But back to the pick, I actually like Oral Roberts here in this matchup a lot. I like them to continue this Cinderella run. Listen, Max Abmas and Kevin O'Banner. Abmas, I believe, is the nation's leading scorer. But Kevin O'Banner, how about 30-11, then 28-11 your 2 tournament games? Those 2 are a lethal inside-out 1-2 punch and a tandem that appears handmade for March Madness. I think those 2 and the Golden Eagles would be too much for Moses Moody and the Razorbacks. Give me Oral Roberts.
ORU has had an incredible run, and I'm rooting for them at this point. I really enjoy their story. Max Abmas and Kevin O'Banner have looked like 2 of the best players in this whole tournament up to this point. But at some point, the best teams are going to have to match up, and which just means Arkansas and their speed and size will get the best of the Golden Eagles. Give me the Razorbacks over the Golden Eagles here. But now on to the Midwest, where all of our favorites have been eliminated, the true wild card region of the tournament thus far. One matchup we have our eyes on, Syracuse and Houston. Houston, the number 2 seed, has been taking care of business, and they face Syracuse, coached by Jim Boeheim, with their patent 2-3 zone. Syracuse as an 11 seed this year, but they aren't playing like it. Scott, who do you have coming out on top?
I suppose I'm continuing to roll with the upsets here. I'm rolling with the Boeheims and Syracuse on this one. Houston has now won 9 consecutive games, and Quentin Grimes is no joke. But the Orange's 2-3 zone just hits different in March. I watched them hold San Diego State and West Virginia, 2 good offensive teams, well below their scoring averages, and I expect them to do the same against a Houston team that just got pushed to the brink by 16-12 Rutgers. But I started by mentioning the Boeheims, and that's really where my gut is. Coach Boeheim's resume speaks for itself, but Buddy Boeheim's last 4 games dating back to the ACC back to ACC tournament play, 27 points, 31, 30, 25. He's hit a combined 24 3-pointers in those 4 games. The announcer calling the game identified it perfectly. I forget exactly who it was calling it, but in the half court based on matchup, Buddy Boeheim knows exactly what to do. He knows whether to use his dribble drive to get to the rim, create for one of his many other shooters on the court, or use his height and elevate over his defender to get off his own shot. He's another coach on the court, and that's invaluable in March. I love me some Dolezaj and the shooting of Joseph Girard as well. The sports world loves a good father-son story, and we're about to get another one here when Syracuse advances past Houston. What do you think about that, Matt?
I have to agree with you, Scott. And the correct way to say his name is actually Buddy Buckets Boeheim, because he has just been going insane. I mean, it's unbelievable what he's been able to do shooting the ball and just taking over games and really allowing Syracuse to run through their offense. And if it comes to it, they know that they can just pass it to Buddy and he'll throw up a shot and it's going to go in most of the time.
Good chance that's going in.
I mean, like a 50-50 chance, and that's unbelievable. And to your point, that 2-3 zone has just been just shocking people, which is so funny because, I mean, I've been around this earth for 24 years, and I think I've known that entire time that Syracuse is going to run a 2-3 zone. Like, it's not anything new, but it still just terrifies teams, and it makes really good teams, to your point, play horribly. And, I mean, when you have a team like Syracuse shooting 60% of its shot, making 60% of its shots from inside the arc, and then 49% of its shots from the three, how are you going to stop them? How are you going to stop a team that's scoring like that? And Houston is coming off a game where they had 12 turnovers against Rutgers. And not only that, but it looks like Dejan Giroux is not going to be available. He was in and out of that last game with the hip, and it looked like it was hurting him. And it took Quentin dropping 22 to really put Rutgers over the – or put Houston over the edge against Rutgers. So I think Syracuse is just too much offense. The defense throws teams off. And, you know, give me Buddy Boeheim and Jim Boeheim going into the Elite Eight.
Right. As you guys know, I picked West Virginia to get to my Final Four, and Buddy Boeheim was just irritating me beyond comprehension this past week. And that's why, you know, Scott said it best, something about Syracuse's zone is different in March. That is why Syracuse is a household name in the NCAA tournament. I mean, Boeheim is an incredible coach, and his stuff works. He recruits guys who listen. He recruits guys with length. And they just rolled over San Diego State, and then they jumped to an early lead on West Virginia, who really tested them. They came back and took the lead. And Syracuse stayed calm and composed the entire time. Buddy Boeheim knocked down big shot after big shot. They were never flustered. They answered the call, and ultimately they moved on. They've been so impressive so far, and Houston will need to play better than they have so far this tournament. Marcus Sasser is 6 of 23 from the field in the tournament. You guys mentioned Dejan Giroux, who didn't score against Cleveland State. Then he comes back and scores 18 versus Rutgers. They're all going to have to bring their A game against Syracuse, and they haven't all showed up on the same night so far. So I'm going to have to go with a hot hand, and I'm taking Syracuse here. But the other Midwest region Sweet 16 game is another shocker, with Loyola Chicago taking on Oregon State. Oregon State. Both have impressive wins this tournament so far, with Loyola knocking off Illinois, who many considered a title favorite, and Oregon State beating Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State. Matt, who wins this matchup?
You know, I think this is an example of two really great teams that know how to play their system, and that's the reason why they've had so much success. I mean, Oregon State really shouldn't even be here. They beat a Colorado team in the Pac-12 championship to get the automatic bid. But Loyola and the way that they played Illinois, shutting down a team that I had said last week was playing some of the best basketball in the nation. I mean, the Ramblers, you just got to go with them. They are a veteran group. They play their style so well, and they impose their will on other teams. And so I think Sister Jean and the Ramblers are going to be going to the Elite Eight, and possibly, you know, honestly, the Final Four would not surprise me at this point because that region is so wide open without Illinois in it. I mean, and Houston is probably the weakest of all the number 2 seeds, and we don't really even have them winning. So give me Loyola winning this and then probably going into the Final Four.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Cinderella pick that I unveiled on this show over a month ago has brought the magic to March once again. Loyola Chicago made the Final Four in 2018. And I said then last month, if any mid-major or small school would do it again, it's the Ramblers. And now just 2 games separate them from that prophecy. Cameron Krutwig doesn't care for any of Lucas Semb's doubt, and neither do Lucas Williamson and Braden Norris, who have formed a tough backcourt for the Ramblers. Not to mention they knocked off, as you mentioned, Matt, the team that I expected to play in the national championship in Illinois. There's no way I'd double back on this prediction. The Ramblers will represent the Midwest region in the Final Four, and how fitting that a team from Chicago will do the honors.
Yeah, like you said, I was very critical of Cameron Krutwig entering this tournament. He has completely proven me wrong. He was methodical and efficient versus Georgia Tech, where he had 10 points of 4 and 6 shooting, and he let his teammates go to work, and he just facilitated. But against Illinois and one of the best big men in the nation, Krutwig gave Kofi Coburn 19-12-5 and sent the number one team in the nation home, busting so many brackets, and giving Sister Jean another game to watch. Oregon State does have a 7-footer in Roman Silva, but if Coburn couldn't hold him, Silva won't be able to. Silva's a little more slow-footed. He's less athletic, and when Loyola's offense runs through Krutwig, they'll be flowing, and I think the Beavers will be on their way home following this matchup. But now to the final region in the East, where Matt's Texas Final Four pick has been eliminated, my LSU pick has been eliminated, Scott's FSU pick remains, and they'll have a tall task this week against the number 1 seeded Michigan Wolverines. Scott, who do you got?
Well, I think you know who I got, but Michigan put on for the Big Ten and surprised me. They got the best of a really good LSU team without Isaiah Livers at their disposal. But, like you mentioned, Luke, my East region representative, Florida State, is still alive, and that's who I'm rolling with. It was Anthony Polite's night on Monday, but on Saturday it was Raekwon Gray who pushed him over the top, who I personally love. He has an athletic, wide body, 6'8", 260. Similar to a Zion who has extreme touch and finesse around the rim. It could be a different guy on any given night for this Nose team. And, whether it's those two I just mentioned, MJ Walker, who was a bit hobbled in the opener, or Kopotovica, the big man from Serbia in the middle, who is a force at both ends at 7'1". Florida State plays suffocating defense.
And you didn't even mention my favorite player, and Scotty Barnes.
I love Scotty. He has the best name on the team. NBA. Yeah, he has the best name on the team. I love Scotty a ton, bro. It's just another piece. They just have so many pieces, that can do different things that are all versatile. Again, like I was saying, just to wrap up here, Florida State plays suffocating defense. They've held their 2 tournament opponents to 54 and 53 points respectively, and they just force you to take and make tough shots. I'll say it like I said it last week. The East region is Florida State's.
I'm going to have to disagree with you. With the only Big Ten team left, you got to go with Michigan. And just because, similar to what I was talking about with Villanova, having Livers out was really the deciding factor, I think, for all of us last week when we talked about what was going to happen with Michigan. And they figured out a way to get past that and play without one of their best players. I mean, you have Brooks and Brown both score over 21 points against LSU. They shot the ball really well, 53% from the field, 40 from 3. And not only that, they were able to do it against, like you said, an LSU team that's so talented, but also because they turned the ball over. Michigan had 12 turnovers, and they still found a way to up the intensity and to really push through and beat a team that in LSU that I actually had winning and playing against Florida State in the Sweet 16. Michigan's bench stepped up, scoring 26 against LSU, who only had 2 bench points. As one of the big deciding factors. When you look at Dickinson, you look at Wagner, you look at Brooks, Brown off the bench, I think that overall, and then Juwan Howard just leading these guys so well to the point where now NBA teams want, a piece of Juwan Howard because he's that good of a coach. You look at what Michigan has been able to do. I'm not going to doubt them anymore. I mean, I've put my faith into other Big Ten teams, and they've proven me wrong. So I think Michigan –
So don't do it again. They try to teach you.
Michigan was the team I didn't put my faith into, and they proved me wrong. So I'm going to go with Michigan in a great game between, FSU. Give me them moving forward and just saving and redeeming the Big Ten in the eyes of the nation.
Yeah, and I have to go with the Wolverines just solely because they beat my LSU Tigers. LSU had a 5-point lead at one point midway through the second half. Michigan battled back. LSU retook that lead. Then Michigan battled back again, took the lead, and at that point they never looked back. They showed real resiliency. Even without Isaiah Livers, they have 5 guys who can hurt you. They have a ferocious big man in Hunter Dickinson. And my only spot of concern is point guard Mike Smith, who really struggled against LSU's length. But when it comes down to it, he's not
that height might be an issue against Florida State's guards.
Right, but when it comes down to it, he's not really somebody who's even going to have the ball much throughout the flow of their offense, other than bringing up the ball. Yep, and setting it up. They like to work through their big guys like Wagner and like Dickinson. And I just think that this is more about Michigan, and they are built so well and coached so well. I think they'll get the best of Florida State. But the last Sweet 16 matchup this weekend will feature UCLA and Alabama. UCLA has won 3 games to get here, beating Michigan State in a play-in game. They've been pleasantly surprising, and Alabama has showed why they are the 2 seed. Matt, let's just make it quick and call a winner. You got Bama or UCLA?
I got Bama. I love UCLA. I thought they played great. That Michigan State playing game was very impressive, but I got Bama.
I was high on Alabama coming into the tournament. I had them in my Sweet 16 and predicted an Elite 8 matchup with them and FSU. So I love them to advance. UCLA is as hot as anybody right now, but Bama's closing five lineup of Shackelford, Quinterly, Ellis, Jones, and Petty will be better than any lineup UCLA can trot out. I like the Crimson Tide.
Absolutely. I like the Crimson Tide, too. They are not just a football school anymore. Nate Oates, a Wisconsin native. Shout out to Nate Oates, a Maranatha Baptist and former Whitewater coach. They've broken school records this year. Give me Alabama actually in the Final Four and absolutely beating UCLA this week. But March Madness continues to give us great TV, and this weekend I expect more of the same. But we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will talk NFL free agents. This is Chalk Talk. Welcome back into BVM Sports Chalk Talk, where we are getting ready to discuss the winners and losers of NFL free agency. There have been plenty of big moves in the early going, changing the landscape of the league. Scott, who do you think has had the best free agency thus far?
No one has improved their team more early on through free agency than the Cleveland Browns. The biggest reason is the signing of John Johnson from the LA Rams. He plays safety, but he can be your deep center fielder, a box defender, a slot corner, even your middle linebacker. The Browns got their quarterback of the defense. Johnson earned the third best PFF grade among safeties. He led the Rams in snaps and was the second highest rated defender on that team behind you-know-who, Aaron Donald. Yeah, even better than your boy Jalen Ramsey, Luke. The Browns boasted the back end even more by grabbing another former Ram, cornerback Troy Hill, who had the most defensive touchdowns in the league last season, 2 pick sixes and a fumble return. Hill was the 18th best ranked the 18th best corner by PFF last season, 3 notches ahead of current Browns corner Denzel Ward, which means the Browns will have 2 top 20 corners next season. Cleveland now has Johnson and Hill, who played for the #1 defense and #1 pass defense in the NFL last season, with Johnson obviously as the signal caller of that unit. Takk McKinley was also signed by the Browns, who is a low-risk, high-reward edge rusher to pair with Myles Garrett, who will attract a ton of attention. And now this team not only has positioned itself to win the AFC North like it almost did last season, but really challenge Kansas City for the AFC crown. The Browns are big winners early on in free agency. What do you got, Matt?
Hold up a minute. Scott,
Love hearing this.
Scott, every single show he has a chance to talk about the Chiefs. He says, this is Pat Mahomes' this is Pat Mahomes' conference. Nobody's touching Pat Mahomes.
Right.
And now the Browns add a couple of cornerbacks, and you're already going to crown them potential AFC champs?
Okay. Well,
I need you to make it make sense.
Sure, I can make this very simple concept very simple for you. First off, the 2 guys I mentioned are not corners. John Johnson plays safety. Troy Hill plays corner.
Sorry, 2 guys in the secondary. Same difference.
Okay, nice. Two elite secondary guys. One who's arguably the 3rd best safety in the entire NFL. Who, again, 2 guys who played for the best defense, the defense that you love so much, Luke. And again, the Chiefs, I've claimed I have not backed down on this at all. I believe the Chiefs are going to win the AFC next season. And all I mentioned as the Browns, who I also believe, similarly as the Miami Dolphins, they're going to be real contenders, challengers to Kansas City, to the AFC crown. I didn't pick the Browns to win the AFC. I said they will be challengers to one team, the team that I've talked about for months now. I don't know what the confusion is, really.
And they're probably the favorites to win the AFC North.
I would pick the Titans. I would pick the Titans over the Browns.
I bet you would.
I would pick the Bills over the Browns. I would still take the Ravens over the Browns.
Okay.
That's great.
And you're picking the Rams, even though they've lost pieces on their defense and they only added 1 quarterback, and they've actually
You're picking the Rams to win the Super Bowl. You're picking the Rams.
It's the same.
You're picking the Rams to
situation.
win the Super Bowl. I don't think you have much leeway here when it comes to NFL talk.
In fact, I'm actually picking. I'm going to say it right here, right now, for you guys. Book me for a Rams-Ravens Super Bowl this coming year.
Okay. Well, this is March 23rd. I believe this is episode 22 of Chalk Talk. We'll be sure to mark this one down and have this one ready for the vault. But Matt,
last time I checked, the Ravens still haven't addressed their wide receiver woes. So unless Lamar is going to do the same thing again this year, which is
quickly, Matt, before you even go, I gotta address this with Luke and his Super Bowl pick, the LA Rams. Not only did they lose Their signal caller defense, John Johnson and Troy Hill, who I just mentioned, they also lost Michael Brockers for nothing. Morgan Fox, who played in all 16 games for them last season. Samson Ebel, another defensive starter. On the offensive side, they lost Malcolm Brown, Gerald Everett, and Josh Reynolds, who I know you're also a big fan of. Obviously they got Matthew Stafford, but he might arrive in LA and look around like, damn, am I still in Detroit? What's going on? So, the Rams have a ton of issues, and the fact that you're picking them to make the Super Bowl is literally hilarious. The funniest thing probably out here all week.
Obviously, they traded Michael Brockers for a reason. They were ready to move on. They did not want to pay him the money. They traded him for a 7th-round pick.
For nothing.
So that is beyond the point. Josh Reynolds, I do like Josh Reynolds, and I love him in Tennessee as a Corey Davis replacement. But you mentioned Gerald Everett, and I just think Tyler Higbee is the guy there. We remember what he did 2 seasons ago. He had an offseason last year with Goff. His numbers are going to reemerge, and he's going to be a top guy. That the tight end position is weak in the NFL. It really is. Tyler Higbee will be a top option with Stafford. We know how Stafford went to Hawkinson.
What do you mean a top option?
It's going to be very similar. I think he will be a top tier tight end in the NFL this coming season.
Tyler Higbee. Okay.
Yep. And again, I'd have to mention they didn't lose Woods. They didn't lose Kupp. They still have one of the best duo tandems in the league. Wide receiver tandems.
Okay. Well, you know what? Moving on, because we're going to have plenty of time to talk about these ridiculous decisions you're making right now, Luke. Like before the draft or anything like that. We're going to have a lot of fun during training camp and whatnot. My team so far that has really shown that they're making moves in the right direction to take advantage of a terrible division is the Washington football team. You go out and you address your quarterback issue for the moment. It's a Band-Aid. It's clearly a Band-Aid. But you at least get a guy in Fitzpatrick that did really well with Miami and helped, in part, lead Tua Tagovailoa into a best-case situation where you were able to, continue on. I mean, you signed Curtis Samuel, who is, coming back with Terry McLaurin. You lose Ronald Darby. But you bring in William Jackson III to replace him. I think this is a Washington football team that has at least allowed themselves the ability to double down on winning a terrible division and keep themselves competitive and give some offensive firepower to help out this defense with Chase Young and the rest of that team that clearly is the best part of their entire team. And this offense now can at least have an opportunity to score. Whereas last season, it was all defense all the time. So I think the football team has done a really good job so far addressing some of their issues that they've had.
I honestly like that pick. I think the football team definitely got better this offseason, but they're still going to struggle even to win their division. That's going to be actually a really fun division this year. We'll have lots of fun talking about that. And the whole time you were talking, Scott was still laughing about my Rams banter. But let me get to my pick.
I'm still over here dead. Rams and Ravens Super Bowl. That's
the Ravens gold. Is even funnier, honestly.
Gold.
Someone on this show has to be off the cuff. I'm not a guy who goes by narrative. Someone's got to go with his own opinions. But let me get to my pick. I like the Patriots. The Patriots came out wheeling and dealing on day one of free agency, and they made some big splashes. They signed both Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, a pair of the best pass-catching tight ends in the NFL. And we all know how much quarterback Cam Newton loves playing with a good tight end and how much Bill Belichick likes coaching one. They also added weapons on the outside with Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar, a late bloomer coming off a career year in Las Vegas. They traded for Trent Brown, giving Cam some elite offensive line help. They addressed the defensive side by adding Matthew Judon, the 2-time Pro Bowler, and added Kyle Van Noy and Jalen Mills. The Patriots will now be competing against the Bills and Dolphins, and this turns into a 3-team race, in my opinion. But, we have the rest of the week should be really exciting. The NBA trade deadline. I got to get out of here before you say something.
One last thing. I just wanted to actually 2 things. I think you didn't – I think you undersold the importance, at least to me, of Cam Newton returning to New England. I think that's a great move. It's obviously, probably been ridiculed in national media a bit based off how Cam looked at certain points last season. But bringing him back and paying him the money that they did tells me that Bill Belichick believes a lot in Cam Newton, and that means a lot. Obviously, they went out, as you mentioned, and, brought in the pieces to surround him with, and that's super important. But last thing.
Hold on, real quick. I'll let you get to it, but I got to respond about Cam. I think that I'm not underselling him. I think Cam at this point in his career as a QB, back in the day when he was with the Panthers, he would have made any team good. But now he needs pieces to make him good. So I think it's a good add that they added those tight ends and some weapons for him, bringing him back for that money. It's a good add because they got the pieces for him. Last year, it just proved that he's not that, Superman Cam Newton.
For sure. And then just last thing, you have the Ravens making the Super Bowl at this point. I just want to push home. I don't even think they'll win the AFC North. Again, just last thing on the Browns, they have the defense in place with a superstar and Myles Garrett and other stars on that unit. They have a top 10 offensive line, the best running back duo in the entire National Football League, a plethora of weapons at tight end and receiver, OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Harrison Bryant, Njoku. The list goes on. A good quarterback in Baker Mayfield, and a great coach in Kevin Stefanski. The Browns will be a top 4 team in the AFC next season. And this free agency, spree was really just a starter.
And there's still wide receivers to be had, and I think when the Ravens get one, they're going to be a real problem.
I don't know if there's many great ones, needle movers at the receiver position left here at this point in free agency, but they definitely need one, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're going to see what happens. I still have a lot of faith in Hollywood, who, like I had mentioned, Nelson Aguilar is a late bloomer, having his best career now. He was
highly sought before you say anything else.
He was highly sought of after the draft, right? He was highly sought out, and he is just now really coming into himself. And I think Hollywood has that same potential. You put someone alongside him, it's really going to bring out his true talents. But listen, we got to get out of here. The rest of the week should be exciting. The NBA trade deadline, NFL free agency still going on, and of course, March Madness this weekend. Enjoy all of the sports you can, and we will see you here next week. From myself, Scott Procter, and Matt Morris, thanks for watching BVM Sports Chalk.